Regional School Committee to order. I'm Kathy Codian, the Vice Chair. Lorraine Ramasco, the Chair, is out of state on business. And Superintendent Kletchy is in traffic on the Mass Pike and will be with us at some point during the meeting, but Todd McGuire is going to step up to the plate.
You got it.
Okey doke. Okay.
Citizens' comments.
So, yes, sir. Do you have a comment?
No.
Okay. Any citizens' comments? Seeing none, let's move on to the school committee chair updates. Lorraine has asked me to remind folks to have their subcommittee and advisory committee minutes reviewed, approved, and up to date. And if you send them to Alita once they're approved, she will post them. There is a Tri-Town meeting next Wednesday, December 12th in Lancaster. It's at the Prescott Building, which is the new town hall. And if you need something a landmark, just look for people protesting outside the gazebo on the town green, and you'll know you're there. Then another reminder about January 26th, which is our budget workshop meeting. It runs in the morning. I don't know, does it start at 8 or 9? Anybody remember?
We usually have breakfast at 8:30, and the meeting usually 8, and the meeting usually starts at 8:30.
Okay, 8:30, and we go till about noontime, 12:30.
Yeah.
So please mark your calendars for that. Any questions? Great. At the last meeting, I mentioned that a number of us attended the MASS conference that was held in Hyannis about a month ago, 4 weeks ago. And I thought it would be good if folks who attended want to have an opportunity to speak briefly about what their experiences there. So I'm just going to go around and ask folks. Steve, do you have anything to share?
Yes, I
Wonderful.
do. I attended 4 sessions there in the 2 days. And the first session I stumbled in on Thursday morning was one of our esteemed chairman was there as one of the participants, and it was a good session. They were imparting how some of, it was primarily, I guess, for new school committee members, and how meetings should go and how, what things should be done. And then I attended 2 sessions on school law. Lovely.
Great.
Boring. Wow. Legalese. It was legalese. There was one, but the best session that I attended was the last one on Friday afternoon. And that was a session on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning students.
Wow.
And they were talking about they gave a couple of examples, one from a larger school district that didn't expect any problems with easily accepting LGBTQ people, and one from a very conservative from the western part of the state that was a small school district and a fairly conservative town, and they worked very hard to prepare the school or the town to accept LGBTQ or the open transgender. Primarily they were talking about transgender students. And for some reason or another, the schedule on introducing it to the community had to be moved up very quickly because I guess the child was going into a very difficult psychological period.
Sure.
And they found that it worked.
Wonderful.
They had no overt problems or covert problems with introducing it to the school system.
But did they have a protocol system before?
They had consultants, they had people who were there working with them and everything else, and they still, they said it was, and you know what? In talking to other people since then, especially young people, it's not a big deal with them. It's a big deal with us because of the way most of us were brought up, one way or the other, either society or religion or whatever.
Sure.
But to the young kids,
Yeah.
they tend to accept their co-conspirators, I would say.
Their peers.
Basically, they basically accept them as they are, and,
Yeah.
and there doesn't seem to be a problem. And,
Yeah.
and the reports that people in the audience were talking about, in their systems, they found basically the same thing.
Wonderful.
That it's more of a concern among the adults than it is among the kids.
Well, I think it's,
Some very early.
yeah.
3, 4, 5, kindergarten, first grade, second grade.
Mhm.
Kids who say, I don't want to be a girl, I want to be a boy, or I don't want to be a boy, I want to be a girl. And it was quite eye-opening for me, and has led me into some different directions individually. So I enjoyed it.
Good, good. No, I think it's wonderful when a community will put the social emotional health and safety of children above all else and come together even with controversial topics, difficult topics. The best interest of the child should always take precedence, and it sounds like that's what that community came to, which is great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Elaine?
Sure, thank you. It was my first time at the conference. I thought it was great. I thought there was a great energy having all of these people at this conference dedicated to public education and to improving the student experience. A major theme that I found as I went to different sessions throughout the weekend was emotional intelligence, social emotional learning, mental health, physical health. It's kind of these, what we might think of as foundational needs that are sort of, sometimes we think of as separate from the academic disciplines in school, but are really just as important. And I took a few notes on, I went to sessions on from SEL for MA, heard case studies from Melrose. Mark Brackett from the Yale University Center for Emotional Intelligence, like Google him. He didn't have any handouts or anything, but he was amazing. Like his talk was awesome. And even the session on the Massachusetts Tiered System of Support from DESE focused on these types of issues. And as a school committee member, what I took out of it the most was that unless these mental, emotional, social needs are met, the academic disciplines that we're trying to teach just won't stick. Mm-hmm. That kids cannot focus, they can't learn, they can't absorb, they can't retain mm-hmm. until this foundational layer is met. So I don't know, as I'm thinking about how we allocate resources and the budget season coming up, I'm thinking about these things about how do we get the best return on our investment, and how do we make sure that not just we're putting things in front of kids, but how is it actually being absorbed. And I thought they did a really good job at the conference talking about that.
Thank you. I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Elaine. And I think that what Steve was talking about also relates to social emotional learning and student health. And I went to several, but there were 3 that really stood out for me. One was from the Melrose Public Schools, has a program of personalized learning. And I think this is something that is quite prevalent in other states, and they are the only community in Massachusetts to follow this program. And personalized learning results from decisions about teaching and learning based on a framework of social emotional learning, clear learning progressions, and expectations for competency, and principles of universal design for learning. The foundational concepts come to life through student-centered approaches the teachers choose, and the flexibility of the learning environment that promotes student agency and engagement. And so this has been a few years in Melrose, and they're moving it up, and I think they're at the high school point. And it's just interesting to see the evolution of this. And they have K-12 habits of learning, self-directed and lifelong learning, problem solving, responsible citizenship, and communication. And I think that this is getting buy-in for this, so that it's a K-12 approach is very impressive. And there are bumps in the road, but I see a real commitment in what was presented about that. The second one that stood out for me is one called Leading Together, Strengthening Relational Trust in Schools. And the Northeast Center for Courage and Renewal, I think it's either at Leslie or Wellesley, but they are focused on having healthy adult relationships within the school, and it's like social emotional learning for adults. And they, often in my career, there's been like a stereotypical adversarial relationship between administration and staff, and this seeks to transcend that by really developing trust. And according to them, the key aspects of relational trust are respect, competence, personal regard, and integrity. And they have a series of workshops. They'll go into schools and work with teachers. And I actually saw this program in Concord. There was a school where there was some issues with school culture and climate, and they did some good work, and they had good teacher buy-in from that. And then the last one that really stood out for me was a presentation by the Framingham Public Schools. They have a superintendent that's been there about a year, and the name of the presentation was Measuring and Improving Student Engagement and School Climate. And Framingham partners with a group called Panorama, and they create surveys for students and for teachers. But the focus is on student engagement, how they relate to the school setting, what they feel about the teachers that they work with. And they use data from those surveys to look at trends in how students are feeling about school and their level of engagement, and then they correlate it to achievement data. It was absolutely fascinating. And Framingham, I think, is in the early stages of using it, but I think the themes of really moving the focus from teacher-centered to student-centered, and taking cues and getting a sense of how students best learn. And it's a dance, really, but it's good to see that there are school systems out there doing these things, and there are a lot of things that we see here that show that we're also involved in improving social emotional learning and student engagement. So that's what I was telling Brooke that. I think this is the third year I went, and the longer you go, you see there's some redundancy. So it was good to go and see something different like this and these takeaways. So sorry to go on so long. But, okay, Colin, your turn.
All right, so for athletics, starting off, as Nashoba's fall sports came to a close, many of the sports teams had very successful seasons. Some notable accomplishments: the girls' field hockey team had an undefeated season all the way up until their state championship match against Somerset Berkeley, where they lost 2-1, unfortunately. As most of you probably know, the varsity football team completed their season with just one loss, but ended up defeating Dighton Rehoboth 31-0 in the Division IV state championship. They had their full Bolton police and fire escort on their way back to the high school, where they were greeted by many of their excited fans. Nashoba also won the Thanksgiving Day football game against Clinton 21-0, and winter sports tryouts were held 2 weeks ago, and practices and games are fully underway. For arts, Nashoba Drama's production of A Christmas Carol was a big success. Every show had a great turnout, and the actors surely put their audiences in the Christmas spirit. Now that the fall play is over and the spring musical was announced at the last show, auditions for Mary Poppins are coming up this Sunday and Monday, and everyone is very excited for this upcoming show. Next Friday is the Holiday Pops concert, where Nashoba bands and choirs will perform their most recent pieces. A group of music students will also be taking a trip to the Boston Pops in Boston in the near future. And the Nashoba Symphonic Band will be performing at the Solomon Pond Mall tomorrow at 7 o'clock. For events, the Nashoba's pep rally was held just before Thanksgiving break, where the different classes competed in friendly games. The senior sports captains and music members were recognized, and the cheer team performed one of their competition routines. The lip dub, which was also recorded that day, premieres tomorrow. Nashoba's EMTs held a CPR instructional event at the championship football game, where they spent about a minute teaching anybody who wanted to learn how to do CPR. They would teach them the proper procedure. And finally, the DECA season is in full swing as members have been working on projects for a while and will present their projects tomorrow to parent judges at the mock competition. They will receive feedback that they can put towards their project to perfect them as best they can for their state competition coming up in January.
Super, wow, a lot going on. Any questions for Colin? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we have the superintendent's report. Todd?
Great, thank you. Good evening. So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on what Colin had to say in terms of some of the accolades going to the high school. So first of all, number one, the Super Bowl at Gillette Stadium last Friday night. Congratulations to the Nashoba Regional High School football team as they returned victorious to Bolton on Friday night after playing a tremendous game at Gillette Stadium and winning the state championship. It was an incredible evening for everyone in attendance. There are so many who deserve a note of thanks. It's difficult to know where to start. Thanks to the players, our coaches, cheerleaders, fans, musicians, parents, staff, and administration, and especially our athletic director, Tanya Rich, for all of her efforts. Special note of thanks to all of our safety partners who organized a parade of lights and sirens to help celebrate the team's accomplishment on the way back to the high school on Friday night. On a side note, we did make Friday and the district, we did host a Spirit Day. Although we celebrated the football team and their accomplishments, the spirit was intended and it ran so much deeper. We continue to celebrate all the tremendous things that our students and staff accomplish here in Nashoba, and our pride runs deep in the Nashoba Regional School District and all that we do. So congratulations there. Second update is on the website. So work continues as we move forward with that. I think in my last update, we had just kind of finished up cleaning up our old website, and I think I had mentioned we've cleaned up at this point and deleted up to 1,200 pages of information on the webpage, and that's across all 6 schools as well as the district page. We are now sending our mock-ups and information over to School Messenger. They have recently sent back mock-ups of each school website to each principal as well as the district site, so we can have a look at it and what it is looking like, and we'll have about 3 rounds of that before we head off to holiday break. And the goal is to roll out the new district and school website web pages after the new year. So that work is coming along, and we're pretty excited about it.
So are we.
Yes. In terms of professional development, this Friday marks our second early release day, December 7th. That work continues in the area, really in the theme of engaging and empowering all learners. It coincides with George Couros' book that the district has been reading. Will culminate in his visit in March. So a lot of our teachers are working on that and developing a lot of autonomous curriculum plans to empower their own learners in their classroom. The professional development session earlier in the year in October focused on an interactive notebook that kind of guided our teachers to help them focus on projects that they want to empower their own learners with. And this Friday's work will continue with that. That's where we're at with professional development. The next one was our vaping parent sessions. We held 3 community sessions on vaping on November 14th, November 15th, and November 19th, one within each community. Our special thanks go to our health and wellness coordinator for the district, Lisa Golbicki, and Tina Grasowski, who is the Massachusetts project coordinator, Central Mass Tobacco-Free Community Partnership at the Department of Psychiatry and the University of Massachusetts Medical School, for their efforts. Also to our administrators who also attended. These sessions were informative. They also presented the actual vaping paraphernalia and displayed that to inform parents and community members on what that actually looks like. The underlying premise for these sessions was to focus on the marketing component of the industry as it relates to youth as its target audience, health implications and risks of vaping. A total of 33 parents attended these sessions, and thanks to everybody who was involved in that.
So I think that this was an incredible undertaking to provide information to parents. I guess I'm a little surprised at the turnout. And understandably, there's busyness, but I'm just wondering about and I don't think anybody has answered this, about what I would consider to be a low turnout across the district. And was this, were the sessions recorded in any way so that people might see them, or?
I don't believe they were
Yeah.
recorded. I know we are working on having follow-up sessions
Okay.
later in the year.
Yeah,
And in talking with Superintendent Clenchey and Lisa Gulbicki, the premise was, hey, if we get 10 parents out, if we get 20 parents
Yeah,
out,
no, I get it.
hopefully that message can continue to multiply, and
Yeah.
we'll get more people out there in the next time and continue to showcase some of that work in
yeah,
terms
no,
of
just
visibility.
keep at it, because it's an important thing for parents to know and understand. I mean, 10 years ago, we were teaching parents how to use, it was before Facebook, what was that site? MySpace?
MySpace.
Yeah, right, so,
Right.
anyway, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Keep going.
The next one just is an update on the staff crisis handbook and the flip charts that we continue to make revisions on. That's kind of an offshoot of some of the Alice emergency training that we had earlier in the year. The final revisions of those flip charts have been made, and the handbook will be published shortly, which means that those will go out to teachers and classrooms across the district, and there will be a consistent emergency crisis plan in every classroom. That the work continues in that area for safety for all, district-wide. The next one, Superintendent Clenchey continues to represent Nashoba on the Assabet Valley Collaborative Executive Board. The work that this group does continues to support ongoing professional development for all member districts. That's a meeting that she attends monthly in the Assabet Valley Collaborative, as well as ongoing growth and development in terms of programming and support for our special needs population. Again, chiming in on what Colin reported out earlier, the Nashoba Regional High School play. Congratulations to everyone involved in the recently performed drama production of Charles Dickens's A Christmas Carol at the high school. It was an incredibly professional presentation. The performance, costume, set, direction, and production were spectacular. It was a tremendous event. And finally, congratulations to our cheerleading squad for their recent efforts, as well as the national all-state championship meet at Worcester State University. Their final performance and competition was outstanding, great energy, and a great routine by our squad.
Super. Okay.
That is the report.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Super. Okay, moving on to new business. We have the DECA donation acceptance. Pat? Thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
Colin.
So I have in front of me a letter from Stavros Andropoulos. He is the DECA advisor at the high school, and he has received a very generous donation from a company called Affordable Interior Systems, also known as AIS, and in the amount of $2,000. And in his letter, I'll just read you the highlights. The membership numbers have increased from 20 members in 2010 to over 157 members this year. It's a big program. And last year, our school qualified 95 kids to the state competition in Boston, and 15 students qualified for the national competition in Atlanta, Georgia. And with increasing numbers of returning members, additional accolades are sure to follow this year. However, due to the increase in membership and tightening of the budget, increased costs, this donation is particularly needed this year and much appreciated. So I would like to have your approval of this donation.
Okay, can we have a motion to accept the donation?
So moved.
Steve, a second, please? Second. Elise, any questions, discussion? Okay, all in favor of accepting the donation in the amount of $2,000 from AIS? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you're gonna stay there?
I'm just gonna stay here.
Okay, and we're looking now at the preliminary FY20 budget.
Yes. So you have before you a budget that at this point has not been subject to any cuts. This is basically what we have at this point in the process. And it's a 7.45% increase. And each one of these lines is summarized. If anybody has any questions on any particular line, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
questions?
I have a process
Elaine?
question. So
Sure.
what, this is my first time doing this, so what is the process from here? Does it go back to budget and warrant? What?
Go ahead, Pat.
So basically, at this point, we've collected all of the information from all the different departments in the schools. And Brooke and myself will go over every single line of the budget submitted to us and question and, remove, increase, evaluate everything and see what things need to have changes. Included in here are numbers that are purely estimates as well, because I don't have state numbers yet. So that's why I just add, to caution, this number looks high, but there are a lot of things that, we have to review and change and make some decisions on what's appropriate to put forward to the communities for their assessment, for your final approval.
So what happens typically is that Pat comes back